The soft hum of the dishwasher was the only noise in the kitchen when Emma burst in, waving an envelope triumphantly. Her eyes sparkled with a level of cruel satisfaction that I had never seen before in my 17-year-old daughter. "Look what I have," she exclaimed, her voice dripping with disdain. She slapped the envelope onto the counter between us. "Dina results. Care to explain why Dad isn't my biological father?" My hands froze over the sink where I had been washing dishes. I took a few moments to dry them on a kitchen towel, grounding myself amidst a whirlwind of emotions. I had always known this day might come, yet I never anticipated it would unfold this way. I wasn't prepared for the look of smug triumph on my daughter's face. "How long have you been lying to us?" Emma demanded, crossing her arms. "Does Dad even know? Or have you played him for a fool all these years too?" I inhaled deeply, observing her face, a mirror of mine at her age, but devoid of the warmth and understanding I desperately needed from her at that moment. "Sit down, Emma," I urged softly. "This isn't a conversation we should have standing up." She scoffed but sat in one of the kitchen chairs, her anger palpable. "Fine. Tell me how you've been living a lie for 17 years. This should be good." "My name is Sarah Mitchell, and today my daughter unwittingly opened a door to a past I'd tried to keep sealed for nearly 2 decades. Not because of shame, but because some truths are too heavy for children to bear. Some stories need to wait until the right moment, and this wasn't it." But Emma had forced my hand. I seated myself across from her, placing my hands calmly on the table. "First, you need to understand something. Every action I've taken, every choice I've made, has been in the interest of protecting you and giving you the best life possible." Emma rolled her eyes, dismissing my words. "Spare me the mom's speech. I want the truth." "The truth," I replied carefully, "is complicated. And before we continue, I need to know what your intentions are here. Are you seeking answers, or are you trying to hurt me?" For a brief moment, her confidence wavered. "I deserve to know who my real father is," she said, though her tone softened. I nodded slowly. "Yes, you do. But not like this. Not as a weapon to fracture this family." She laughed bitterly. "Family? It's all a web of lies." "No." Y asserta firmly. "It's built on love. Your father, the man who raised you and loved you every single day of your life, he knows you're not biologically his. He has always known." Emma's eyes widened, her carefully constructed narrative beginning to crumble. "When David and I met, I was already pregnant with you," I explained, watching her reaction closely. "I was 22, scared and alone. He did not have to stay or love us, but he chose to every single day." Emma's voice trembled. "But why didn't you tell me?" I reached out across the table, grateful when she didn't recoil from my touch. "Because stories take time. Because you needed to understand that family isn't just about DNA, it's about choice, about love." "Then who is my biological father?" she asked, her voice smaller now. I closed my eyes briefly, memories flooding back. His name was Michael. And that was the part of the story I had long tried to protect. Emma's insistence was palpable, but the confidence in her eyes had morphed into vulnerability. "I need to know," she urged. Bracing myself, I prepared for the conversation I had hoped would happen years later when she was older and could grasp the complexities of love, loss, and the choices we make in our youth. "I met Michael during college," I began, keeping my voice steady despite the heaviness in my chest. "He was charming and ambitious, and I believed I was in love. We had been dating for nearly a year when I discovered I was pregnant." Emma leaned forward, intent on every word. "What happened after you told him?" she asked. I paused, carefully selecting my words. "He made it clear he wasn't ready for that kind of responsibility. He had ambitions, law school, plans for a future that didn't involve a child. He suggested I take care of it, and when I refused, he vanished." "Just like that?" Emma whispered. I nodded. "Just like that." Attempts to reach him were futile as he blocked my number, changed his email. And when I approached his parents, your biological grandparents, they advised me to stay away, even offering money to silence me about the whole affair. "Did you accept it?" Emma queried, wide-eyed.
No.
I replied firmly. I wanted to provide you with a life filled with love, not secrets or shame. I dropped out of college and moved back in with my parents, taking on 2 jobs to prepare for her arrival. Emma absorbed the truth, her previous eagerness replaced with understanding. How did you meet David? She asked, curiosity lacing her voice. A smile stretched across my face as I recalled. I was working at a coffee shop, 7 months pregnant and exhausted. David was a regular, always kind, always leaving generous tips. One day, overwhelmed with fatigue, I nearly fainted. He helped me sit down, brought me water, and stayed until my shift ended. He wasn't bothered by you being pregnant with someone else's child? Emma questioned further. He saw it as receiving 2 miracles at once. I answered, tears welling up. David started visiting more frequently, bringing me healthy snacks after reading that pregnant women needed extra nutrients. Emma's lip quivered. He really chose us. I nodded. He did. We got married when you were 6 months old, and he insisted on adopting you legally. He wanted everyone to know you were his daughter, in every sense that mattered. That's why his name is on your birth certificate. Because he chose to be your father. A silence filled the kitchen as Emma digested the information, wrestling with a truth far more complicated than she had anticipated. I'm sorry, she murmured, tears streaming down her face. I thought I was revealing a horrible secret. I wanted to hurt you because I've been so angry and didn't understand why. I wrapped her in my arms, feeling her body tremble with sobs. Being 17 is tough, sweetheart. Anger is part of growing up, but come to me, talk to me, don't try to rewrite our history. She nodded against my shoulder. Is David, going to be upset about the DNA test? She asked. No, I soothed, stroking her hair. He's always known this day would come. We both have. We just hoped you'd choose to come to us. I said we could share the story when you felt ready. I want to hear it now, Emma insisted, drying her eyes. The whole story, with Dad here too. Smiling, I picked up my phone and told her. I'll call him, but remember, Emma, this might not be what you expected. Our perceptions of others' decisions are often more complex than they seem. As I dialed David's number, Emma settled back into her chair, momentarily pushing the DNA results aside, appearing younger and more vulnerable, reminiscent of when she used to seek comfort in our bed during thunderstorms. David answered promptly on the second ring. Hey love, everything okay? He inquired. Emma took a DNA test. I responded. It's time for that conversation we've been preparing for. A pause ensued. Then David's warm, reassuring voice arrived through the line. I'll be home in 20 minutes. We'll face it together, like always. After hanging up, I turned to Emma, who watched me with tear-rimmed eyes. He's on his way, I assured. Are you ready for the whole story? She nodded, and I noticed her earlier defiance had morphed into a softer acceptance.
Yeah,
she whispered. I think I am. Exactly 20 minutes later, David's footsteps resonated through the house as he arrived, finding Emma in the kitchen, her earlier resolve faltering. Hey, sweetheart. He greeted gently, placing his briefcase aside. Your mom filled me in. Emma's voice quivered. Dad, But David already closed the distance, wrapping her in a comforting embrace. It's okay. He reassured her among strands of her hair. We've been preparing for this day. I just wish you felt you could come to us first. Emotional, I watched their embrace with gratitude for this man who had generously chosen us, never making Emma feel anything less than cherished. Once they separated, David sat beside Emma, one arm still wrapped around her shoulders. So, he began, meeting my eyes across the table. Where do we start? Emma, with newfound openness, confessed, Mom told me about when you two met, about how you chose us. David offered a heartfelt smile. Best decision I ever made, he responded, before turning to me. But there's more to uncover, right, Sarah? Recognizing the moment to reveal everything, I nodded. Yes, Emma should know the entire past, including Michael's attempts to reconnect. Emma's head raised abruptly at this revelation. He tried to come back? She queried, her voice trembling. Gathering strength from David's steady presence, I replied, "When you were 5, Michael appeared at our door. He'd seen a picture of you at his parents' home, keeping tabs through mutual acquaintances, unbeknownst to us at the time." Emma, with a barely audible voice, asked, "What did he want?" He admitted it was a mistake. I disclosed, the memory vivid after all these years. Despite his accomplishments in law and a successful marriage, he felt something missing, the daughter he once left. David's jaw tensed slightly, yet his voice remained composed. "I wonder what you told him, Sarah?" I reached across the table. I sat at the table, taking Emma's hand, and expressed that the day he walked away, he forfeited the right to be her father. Being a parent isn't something you only do when it's convenient. Her dad, David, was there for every moment, every scraped knee, nightmare, and triumph. He was a father in every meaningful way. "Did Michael contest it?" Emma asked. David replied calmly. "He threatened court action. Said he now had resources, could prove he was the biological father, and demand partial custody." Emma's eyes widened. "What did you do?" "We fought back," I said simply. Years of documented neglect and abandonment were on our side, plus David's legal adoption of you was in place. More importantly, David added, gently gripping Emma's shoulder, "you were old enough to be impacted by any custody dispute. We weren't going to expose you to that trauma just because Michael suddenly decided he was ready to be a dad." In the end, he backed down. I continued. "I think he realized moving forward would only harm everyone, especially you. However, he did make one request." "What was it?" Emma inquired. "He asked that when you were mature enough to understand, we tell you the truth. He regretted his decisions, had grown up, and realized what he lost." I paused, studying her face. "And we agreed on our terms when we deemed you ready." Emma was silent for a moment, reflecting. "Do you know where he is now?" David and I exchanged a glance. "Yes," I replied cautiously. "He's still around, now has his own law firm downtown, 2 other children with his wife." "My half-siblings," Emma softly tested the term. "Biologically, yes," David responded gently, "but Emma, remember, sharing DNA doesn't automatically grant someone rights in your life. It's your choice if and when you're ready." Emma looked up, tears glistening in her eyes. "You'll always be my real dad, right? No matter what." David embraced her tightly, his own eyes shining. "Always, sweetheart. Nothing could alter that." I observed them, reminiscing about the transformative moments that brought us here. The day David first held Emma with wonder, her first steps, father-daughter dances, bedtime stories, and the little moments that formed their unbreakable connection. "I feel silly," Emma confessed, wiping her eyes. "I thought I was revealing some big scandal, but instead," I interjected, "instead you discovered that family is more intricate and beautiful than just DNA. And love is a daily choice," David added. "The DNA test doesn't redefine us, erase our past, or diminish our love. If anything, it confirms what I've always known, that choosing to be your father was the greatest gift of my life." Emma reached for the envelope on the counter, fingers trembling. Can we dispose of this? I don't need it anymore." I nodded, tears prickling. "Of course." We watched silently as she tore it, letting the pieces fall away. Something within her shifted as a sense of peace washed over her features. "Mom," Emma whispered softly. "Dad, I'm sorry for trying to hurt you and for not trusting you enough to simply ask." "We understand," I reassured her, explaining that growing up involves questioning things and figuring out one's identity. "But next time you have questions about your past, come to us first. We've never wanted to hide anything from you. We were only trying to protect you until you were ready for the whole truth." David nodded, adding, "Now that everything's out in the open, we can discuss what you want to do next. If you have questions about Michael or your biological heritage, we're here to help you find those answers when you're ready." Emma shook her head, saying she didn't want to know right now. Perhaps someday, but as she looked between us, her expression softened. "For now, I just want to be with my real family." The three of us sat there in the kitchen, the evening light streaming through the windows, our family stronger for having weathered the storm together. Emma's DNA test, intended as a weapon, had instead become a bridge to understanding, reminding us that meaningful bonds are not necessarily the ones we were born into, but those we choose to nurture and protect. Later that night, after Emma had gone to bed, David and I sat on the back porch, his arm wrapped around me as we gazed at the stars. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. I nodded, leaning into his warmth. "Better than okay, I think. This needed to happen, maybe not in the way it did, but Emma needed to know the truth. She's stronger than we often realize," David mused, just like her mother. I turned to look at him, this man who had stepped into our lives and chosen to make us his family. "Thank you," I whispered, "for everything, for loving us both so wholly." He smiled, pulling me closer. "Thank you for letting me, for trusting me with your heart and with Emma's." Inside, we could hear Emma moving around her room, likely getting ready for bed. The sound was familiar, precious, a reminder of all the everyday moments that formed our extraordinary love story. "Do you think she'll want to meet him one day?" I asked quietly, referring to Michael. David paused, contemplating. "Maybe, and if she does, we'll support her. But I think today taught her something important, that the truth isn't always what we expect, and that the family we choose can be stronger than the family we're born into." I nodded, feeling a deep peace settle over me. The secret I had carried for so long was no longer a secret, and that clarity brought a sense of relief. Our family wasn't perfect, but it was genuine, built on choice, love, and the daily decision to be there for each other. Emma's DNA test meant to tear us apart had only brought us closer, showing her and reminding us that family isn't just about blood. It's about the people who stay and choose to love us through every storm, who build a life with us one moment at a time. As David and I sat under the stars, I reflected on all the paths that had led us here. Every choice, struggle, moment of doubt and faith, and I knew with absolute certainty that we had created something truly beautiful. A family bound not by DNA, but by something far stronger, the power of unconditional love.